Welcome to the Caleb Gordon podcast, Mr. Kenny Mullican. How in the world are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing very well, Caleb. It's Monday morning and hitting the ground running.
That's absolutely. So you and I met about a month ago, and we had a great lunch and had some good conversations. And I thought, man, this would be fun to have you on the podcast and talk about the world of AI and IT and all those kind of fun things, because I think people are trying to get their heads wrapped around the idea of what AI is and what what its function is and how it works. But before we get into all of those different branches, I want to have people sort of kind of know who you are. So for those who don't know who you are, give us a little background of who Kenny is and what you do, and yeah, run from there.
Yeah, so my job is as the CIO, the Chief Information Officer for Paragon Films. I always have to say we're a plastics manufacturer, not a movie company.
That was
Whenever people see the films on there, that's the first thought is, oh, what kind of movies are we making in Broken
mhm,
Arrow,
yeah,
Oklahoma?
yeah.
But for us, films means stretch film. So imagine like rolls of, Glad cling wrap, but great big rolls used for wrapping boxes on pallets for shipping. We make a few, 100 million pounds a year of that stuff. And I've been in IT work for 35 years. It's, even before when I was in school, I always knew that's what I wanted to do. Love playing with computers as a kid,
Mm.
first kid in my middle school to have a computer, so I was just that nerd that was doing that stuff. And once I got out of college, dived right in, and most of my career has been in the software development side of things. I really like to build. I've liked to see how to solve problems using technology. And so it started out as being just writing code, but then later it got more into leading teams of people, and then later into more IT management. But throughout this whole time and in different roles in different industries, I always have this kind of constant theme there, which is that I keep my hands enough on the technology that I understand how it works and what's going on. I mean, I have had times where I realized I was getting too much into the weeds, and as a leader, I had too much depending on me as the only guy that knew anything about that, and so have to, periodically step back and go, okay, don't do
Right.
that. Have things delegated where other people can handle stuff. But yet there's something about experiencing yourself that is just different than just having people that do that and saying, yeah, I used to be the technology guy, but I've just been a business leader for 10 years now. I wouldn't
Right.
know how to do those things. There's something about knowing how to do it that then, in my opinion, makes it easier to manage. Other people are doing it, or when you bring in a consultant or you bring in a vendor, you kind of know whether they're blowing smoke or whether they know what they're
Right.
talking about if you kind of have been into it a little bit yourself.
Oh, absolutely. And this is one of those things. When you and I had this conversation, we sat down, we talked about AI. I realized you knew exactly what you were looking for, what you were needing, and I thought this was fascinating because it really seems like it has jumped into just within the last year. Like we were hearing just little bits and pieces about AI here and there, and oh, it's the boogeyman, it's this, it's that, and then the next thing you know, man, everybody's using it to some degree somewhere in their daily life. And technology, man, it's moving fast. Like it just seems like boom, we got here. From your perspective, what are the biggest changes happening right now in the AI/IT infrastructure world?
Yeah, well, the adoption curve has been extremely short. Going from a few people using it to a few more people, and then that exponential thing has really ramped up faster than any other technology I've ever seen. And I think a lot of that is due to the advent of large language models becoming widely available. Because a few years ago, I was going to Microsoft conferences and they were already talking about doing things with AI, but it was mainly focused on machine learning and vision and OCR, being able to do things that could become part of your workflow or building your own models. But they didn't really have that thing that made you just go, wow, this feels like magic.
Mm.
And I think that's when the turning point first happened was with ChatGPT, where all of a sudden, all they did is they had this actually fairly simple program, but that had this model with billions of weights in it that just takes all this text from the whole web and says, okay, here, I'm going to somehow index this.
Right.
And I don't know a lot of details about this, but what I had heard is that even the developers, the people that made these models, didn't know what it was going to be able to do and still can't fully explain how it answers some questions the way it does. It's not this program that says, if this do this, then if this do this. And if you don't want it to do that, then just change the program because it's just so much information, all being used at one time. But what also happened over the once ChatGPT came out is there started being competition with different people trying to
Hmm.
be first on things,
Right.
and they made the tools better and better. So, when ChatGPT first came out, it was easy. Anybody could use it as far as just asking a question. And so, to a lot of people, it was kind of like a fancy way to do a Google search. You just ask it a question and you get an answer back instead of typing a search word and then clicking a
Right.
few links. You just ask a question that comes back in English or whatever language you're speaking. Um, but what they did was they added tools to it. So, like one of the first things I remember when ChatGPT couldn't do math very well. And so then they just connected it to a system that did do math well. And so then it didn't need to know how to do math. It just needed to know how to use the math tool or
Right.
kind of like use a calculator.
Yep.
And so the same thing kept going further and further and further. Then they said, oh, well, this model doesn't know how to look at images, but we can, use another model that does. And so it added and added and added. And then things like, Copilot where it gets embedded into what you're doing and now it has access to your data and your knowledge. And so now all of a sudden people can ask it a question and instead of it just being, well, is this information that was available to the model last October? It's, oh, I can go look at your calendar. I can look at your inbox. I can look at
Hmm.
all the Teams messages you did today. And so it starts just, adding more and more and more and more to that.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's fascinating to watch, and it feels like now AI is literally everywhere. And I mean, there's all these. You got Claude, you got Copilot, you got ChatGPT, you've got all these different uh, companies that are coming at you saying, "Hey, you should use this for this, use it for this, use it for this," and it's everywhere. What do you think is hype when it comes to AI, and what is actually changing the future of business?
And it's weird because the hype cycle has changed so much. In the early days, I saw more hype than actual traction, content. So in the very beginning, there was things that were possible with AI, and all of a sudden you had people talking as if they were just automating everything. So that's where I think some of the hype is today is this thought that you need to immediately have all these agents that are taking the place of humans in your
Mm.
company. That you could have somebody that is instead of having, an accounts payable clerk, you just have an accounts payable AI agent, and it's going to do all that for you. That's where I think people both get scared because, oh no, I'm an AP clerk.
Yeah.
An AI can just come in and completely do my job. Same thing for software development. I mean, AI can write code, um, but it really, I don't haven't seen any cases where somebody's taken an AI agent and said, hey, you come in and you've done everything that this software developer could do before. You're going to go out and you're going to meet with the clients and you're going to understand their needs and you're going to solution what they need. And then you're going to go off and you're going to write it and you're going to debug it and you're going to publish it and then you're going to take feedback. I mean, I think all those things are there's all pieces of that
Sure.
can be automated. But you don't really just have these employees that could completely be replaced by an agent. So that's where I think a lot of the hype is. But then the reality, in some cases, is bigger than what people think too. Because I still
Hmm.
see a lot of developers out there saying, "Oh, you can't count on Claude to write code for you. It's not any good. It just
Mm.
writes AI slop." And it's like, well, that hasn't been my experience or my
Right.
team's experience. We're
Right.
not getting 20% or 30% improvement in processes. In some cases, we're doing things in days or weeks that used to take months or that we just couldn't even, afford to do at all.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things that I think that if you know how, I think the people that are going to be left behind, quote unquote, or lose their jobs or whatever you want to use that terminology, are the people that aren't educating themselves and bettering themselves and understanding what it is. One of the things that I've heard a lot of people talking about is vulnerability this to their companies. What are some of the biggest vulnerabilities do you think companies have that they don't even realize about AI?
Um, I know one of the things that I've had to see is that depending on which AI tool you use, they can have better guardrails for your average user. So, for instance, one thing that I really like about Microsoft Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot, is that once you put it in your system, for the most part, it's pretty safe. Your people can feel okay about putting in company data in there, and that it's not just going out into a public thing where they might use it to train their data with. And they put a lot of guardrails in there because Microsoft doesn't want to be known as the company that put this thing out and then it caused somebody to lose all their data or to have
Hmm.
things be completely broken. We tried Microsoft's AI and it broke everything.
Yep, didn't
And
work.
so in some cases, they've taken a lot of steps to be overly cautious, and people have said, oh, they're behind. They're not
Right.
keeping up, but they're just more cautious on all of that. Claude is one that I absolutely love, but it's some powerful tools that even
Mhm.
when you install them, they have notes on it that says, be careful the way that you use this. This actually could be dangerous, and you are basically taking this into your own hands if you choose to enable it. They're saying, we're going to leave that up to you. You can
Yeah.
decide.
Yeah.
And so then the problem happens is how much control do you have over how your users use it? So if I say, for instance, I roll out Claude to a bunch of people and I say, well, my IT guys are responsible enough to use this tool. But if it makes that available to everybody who has it, now what if I put it in the hands of some people that aren't in IT and now they've got some abilities? And what we've even seen happen is that if the um, AI has the ability to do something, sometimes it'll do it and it doesn't even always ask.
Mhm.
So if you have access to delete something and then you give your AI access to do what you have access to do, it could delete it. And if
Mhm.
it decides that that's what you need, it might just delete it and then afterwards go, oh, dude, I'm so sorry. I should have asked
It's
first.
my fault.
I'll remember next time to ask, and then it may or may not remember to ask next time. And so that's where some of the vulnerability can happen, and then the other is just uh, if you give people access to tools, you don't necessarily know always what they're going to find. So we even found this to be the case with Copilot. If you had a
Mhm.
folder somewhere and you had a file in it that had payroll data, and you didn't lock down that folder to only be accessible by HR, but it was nested 10 levels deep in some folder system somewhere, probably no one would ever stumble across it and you'd be okay. But Copilot may just go out and find it, say, oh, how about this file? Is that what you were looking for? And you go, oh, I don't think I should have had access to
It's
that.
just
And
a matter of
so
asking the right questions.
yeah, and so I mean, but that's not really the AI didn't cause the problem, it just
Mm.
uncovered a problem you already had.
Yeah.
So that's something where people do need to be a little bit careful. If you haven't put some kind of thing where you've got, like in our company, most departments have two main folders in the OneDrive, and one is department shared and one is department public. And so if HR has a bunch of files that they want a lot of people to get access to, they put it in the shared. And if it's private, then they put it in the, or, vice versa, however I said that. But they've got some that's going to be a private department only, and that's where
Yeah.
they would put certain things. But if you haven't done that, if you just gave everybody access to a public thing and they started putting things up in a shared folder, then AI might just make that
Yeah.
obvious or available.
Yep. Absolutely. So, Kenny, in your opinion, what separates strong technology leaders from just the average guy?
Every organization faces threats digital, strategic, human, but your team doesn't have to face it alone. At the Nine Minds Group, we blend elite cybersecurity expertise with practical business strategy to protect what matters most your data, your people, and your reputation. We partner with you to assess risk, strengthen defenses, and build a secure foundation for growth because your smart security isn't just technology, it's peace of mind.
Working with Nine Minds, they bring high quality technical resources to bear. We're the team that you want to bring in if your technology is holding your business back instead of accelerating the growth that you want to see from your business.
You will get top-notch professional service from us. You will get personalized service from us.
We're going to work to understand your business. Reach out and schedule your consultation, and let's get started.
Visit the9minds.com. That's THENINEMINDS.com. The9minds.com. Hey, does financial planning have you feel as if you're in the weeds? Well, the good folks at Revo Financial can help you get out of the forest and onto a clear path that works best for your family. Get in touch with them at revofinancial.com. That's revofinancial.com. Hey, my friends, if you're passing through Copan, Oklahoma, make sure and stop by Copan Restaurant and Truck Stop. It's a place for great food, hot coffee, and friendly faces that make you feel right at home. Whether you're a local or a trucker on the road, it's a stop you can count on. Copan Restaurant and Truck Stop. Give them a call, 918-532-4666. Copan Restaurant and Truck Stop. Good food, good people in Copan, Oklahoma.
One of the key differentiators for me is curiosity. If you're not curious about new technology, then you're much more likely to get stuck in a rut of,
Come on.
you know what, we've got this tool, it's been there, we don't need to get anything new. It's doing what it needs to. Let's just keep people stable. That's something that used to be valued a lot among IT leaders, was just stability. Let's just get people their reports on time. Let's have the 99.999% uptime and don't rock the boat. But that doesn't really help your company to compete in a fast moving environment. And so I think a certain amount of curiosity about, is there a better way to do this? Is there another product out there that we could benefit from? Are there new technologies that would help our team to get things done faster or be able to answer those questions better? So I think that curiosity is a big one. And then I think another one is, and this, I had mentioned at the beginning, somebody who's willing to get in and get their hands dirty. And
Yeah.
The larger the organization, the harder it becomes for people in leadership positions to be able to be part of the solution without getting into the weeds. But I think you can always do it to some level. I'm talking to people that are very high up, even as high as CEOs in companies that are getting in and exploring some of the technologies. Not that they're building out something for production use, but they're at least getting in and saying, hey, I've got this idea for this dashboard. And instead of waiting or telling IT I need to build it for me, what if I just see if I can make it myself with AI? Maybe I can do this research without waiting for consultants to come in and do it for me. Maybe I could do it myself. And what you then start to get the benefit of is the people who really do have to build it have so much more to go on if you've already tried to do your own kind of proof of concept. If you've already done a little bit of a prototype and said, hey, this is actually pretty close to what I need, you've got this really good picture of what that leader is looking for, compared to if they just said, well, here's what I need, here's what I want. And then the people would go off and go, gosh, we got to try to figure out what it is. And they come back and they say, how about this? They're like, no, that's not it. Shoot, let me go try this thing and see. I don't know what it is, but I'll know it when I see it, So that's where I think the hands-on thing can really benefit them too.
I love it. I love how you said, get your hands dirty. There's so many people that don't want to get in the weeds and try to figure things out. And I love that. So that's a good perspective on that. Okay. So I want to jump gears just for the last little part of this podcast, because it is a Christian podcast and I talk about faith, family, and culture. And I wanted to see how a couple different questions here. How does your faith intersect with this particular world of AI, personally, your faith, and how does it shape how you approach technology and business in general?
Yeah, I feel like that, we have a responsibility to our world, to bring light, to bring love, and to help people in any way that we can. And so that's where I'm just a hopeless optimist about technology. I know that there are ways that it can be used for evil, and there are a lot of things that we need to think about, and we need to make sure that we don't just let it go unchecked. Um, but I just think about the possibilities of if AI could really help, you know, find better ways to cure cancer, better ways to feed hungry people, better ways to you know, bring medicine or you know, better health to people around the world. There's just so many possibilities there, and I've already seen, you know, little bits and pieces of that start to come together. And then also even just things like um, having I like to use AI as a thinking partner. And
Mhm.
so sometimes when I'm wrestling with something, you know, like when my dad was alive, he was one of my best friends, and I used
Come
to
on.
go and sit with him, and we would just wrestle with, you know, questions of faith, because there's just a lot of things that were like we just don't know, and we won't know till we get to heaven, but we can still wrestle with it and think, well, what about this, and how do you deal with that, and this thing
Yeah.
that's going on in our world today? How do we, you know, best respond to that? And he was so good about doing that with, but he passed away a few years ago. And I actually sometimes find myself doing that same thing with my AI tools. You know, not that I'm asking it for answers, but more like I'm using it as a way to help me think. You
Mhm.
know, to challenge me, to help me organize my thoughts. Because sometimes
Sure.
I just like to just talk rambling thoughts on a topic, and then have it put it together into a form where I can go,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, that's what I was trying to say. I did not say
exactly.
that very eloquently. It was lots of, you know, paragraphs that went off in all different directions, but the AI is able to really take that and organize it. And not only can it put it in a document, but I can even tell it, hey, put that in a little bit of an interactive web page
Yeah.
where there's some visuals and some things that make it, you know, if I wanted to share that with somebody, I could very quickly get it to a, you know, here's my thoughts on this. And you know, often it's not something that I want to teach people as much as it is questions that I want to ask. What do you think about this? And how do we, you know, wrestle with that? And
Mhm.
so that's kind of the way that I've introduced AI into my faith journey.
I love that. And listen, you and I are in that same club. I did the same thing with my dad. My dad was one of my best friends, and we wrestled through all the conversations in faith. He was my pastor for years, and so having something like this, and it's fascinating to use it like that as a tool, as a resource, because I mean, we use dictionaries, we use all these we use Google for how many years? I mean, we use all these things for our benefit, and I love that you have an optimistic spirit about you about using this. And it's exciting to see the future of what AI is going to, I think, bring for us. Now, are there things we need to be cautious about? Absolutely, but I think that there needs to be I think this is where Christians need to lean in, and rather than look at it as a boogeyman, we need to lean in and say, man, let's go full force to see, let's use this for the good of humanity and for the glory of God. I think that would be the best avenue for you and I, or for all of us to use. So, okay, so final question. Listen, I didn't, if somebody does Google your name, you're all over the place, brother. Like you're speaking at panels, you're writing blogs, you're getting articles written about you, and so you've got some hands all over this stuff. You're sort of kind of the VIP of CIOs in the world of technology and AI. If you could encourage business leaders listening to you today with just a single piece of advice about technology, leadership, and the future of AI and IT infrastructure, what would it be?
I think that it is, you got to just get moving forward with it. Um, and also not to, you know what, let me back up a little bit. It's not just jumping into it, because there are plenty of CEOs that are saying we've got to be using AI, just get going with AI without any thought to how to use it. And so I think there's two paths. One is letting people begin to use AI so that they can experience what's possible. And that's where you do something like roll out Copilot or roll out Claude to individuals who are going to learn how to improve something within their company with it. But then on the larger scale things, that's where it's don't start with the idea of AI, but instead start with what kind of problems have I been facing, or what kind of challenges does our company have, particularly the ones where you say, we've struggled with this for so long and never really been able to come up with a good answer for how to do that. That's where you might say, you know what, AI might be able to provide an avenue to that wasn't available before, or that you said, we could solve this, but oh my gosh, it's a multi-million-dollar thing with consulting and it's going to take 2 years. You may be able to say, let's rethink that and instead say, here's the problem we're trying to solve. Here's what fixed would look like. Here's what good or excellent is. And then say, does AI provide a way to get to that that wasn't available before, that maybe we can afford, or that we can iterate with and say we could get to a prototype or a first version of that and then pivot from there. And it's just changed the whole economics of what's possible when you can shorten that whole prototype time frame down to days or weeks instead of months to years.
Mm-hmm. Man, I love that. That's a great piece of advice. I love it. So you're on the interwebs. You're on LinkedIn. If somebody's interested in getting a hold of you, how do they find you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the easiest thing. I'm all over for that place, just trying to make myself available and connecting with people. So look for me on Kenny Mullican at on LinkedIn and connect, and we can see where it goes from there.
I love it. Yeah, it's true. He'll connect with you. Obviously we're talking, so that's where we met. So Kenny, thank you so much for taking time just to come on the podcast and just talk about all these things that I think are really impacting the world today. And I pray that this encourages folks and encourages in their walk this week.
Thanks, Caleb. It was fun.
Yes, sir. Hey, my friends, thanks for tuning in to this podcast. If you enjoyed listening to this conversation, check out calebgordon.org for all the other episodes that are out there, anything that I've written, anything that I have podcast-wise, and I pray that it blesses you and it encourages you. Love y'all.